Welcome to the Uncle Goof podcast. I've got another special guest today, Isaac Dotson. Isaac is the son of a close college buddy of mine and grew up alongside my three kids, so having him on the show is a real full circle moment for me. Isaac played 5 years of Division I football at Washington State University, my alma mater, where he shined on the field. But beyond sports, he's always had a creative spark. Now based in Los Angeles, Isaac is carving out a unique path for himself, working in tech, modeling, and building a career in music, where he's already seen some early success. I'm excited to chat with Isaac about his journey from football fields to creative ventures and everything in between. This is going to be a great conversation, so let's dive in. Here's my interview with the talented Isaac Dotson. Thank you for joining me. I appreciate it.
Of course, thanks for having me.
Yeah. So I just want to have a little conversation with you. Primarily, I like to talk about people's experiences, their stories in their lives, personal and professional, and really kind of talk about relationships and networking and, just sort of cultivating those relationships and how we navigate them through our lives. And I know that, you come from a younger generation than I, obviously. And I'm really interested to hear some of your stories and your approach on things. So
nice.
Yeah,
I'm excited. Let's get into it.
So you're coming to us from Los Angeles today, is that right?
Correct, yeah.
Great, and that's where you...
Culver City area.
Okay, yeah, and you live there full-time right now, right?
I do, yeah.
So I know where you came from. I know how we know each other, but share with the audience how we know each other and how we became friends.
Yeah, of course. So grew up in Bellevue, obviously. Well, I guess not obviously for everyone, but as you know. My older sister, Chanel, and your daughter, Samia, best friends. But ironically, I think that was on their first day of kindergarten, you and my dad ran into each other after being fraternity brothers 20 years prior. So, so that's kind of how that connection started. And then obviously Sam and Chanel, best friends forever. So Samia was like my half sister, I guess, if you will. Not that I didn't already have enough before, but grew up around Sam and Theo and Amira, and got to know obviously your family pretty well. And then fast forward to, I guess, what was that when I started working with Walker's Lockers, when we really kind of,
maybe
2017
5-6 years ago, something like that.
Yeah, 2018, right after college, started working for Walker's Lockers a little bit and running some gigs, and kind of just stuck close since then, really. Yeah. And it's been a lot of fun hanging out and getting to know you more and spend time with you.
So yeah, and it has been great. And I met you, I think if I met, Chanel when she was in kindergarten or first grade, you were just a little one. You were
it must have been
5 or 6 years old, or something like that. Yeah, maybe even younger, right? And as you mentioned, your dad and I were fraternity brothers at Washington State University, and then you smartly ended up playing ball. We'll talk about that, but playing football at Wazoo years later, which brought us even closer together, and your mother and my wife as well. So we have a great relationship. We have a great sort of history in how this got here. But I want to tell you that I really respect you as a person, what you've been doing with your life, how you carry yourself. I've just been really impressed by you over the years, and I'm glad to call you a friend, but I'm also excited to see what you're doing now and going forward. So I appreciate it.
Likewise. Yeah. Thank you, Jeff. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Kind words.
So you're known as Side Street in the music world, right? And we're going to talk about that a little bit too. But you're doing some music production. You're working for a tech company. You're doing a little bit of modeling. You're kind of a jack of all trades, doing a lot of things. Yeah. Tell me a little bit about some of those things you're doing.
Yeah, so music has definitely been the most consistent one, at least as far as that being kind of the career and what's always been the base level of what I'm constantly doing, which started just kind of as, passion, learning how to produce music and everything, making songs through college, and then deciding once football ended to move down to LA and give it a shot career-wise. And it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but I've had some really cool opportunities. Been able to go on a couple nationwide tours with some pretty big artists and see the whole country. So that's been really great. And then obviously being able to network and develop relationships with even more artists as a result of that, and continue to work with a couple of those artists that were on that tour as well, or those two tours. So music's always been kind of the thing. In the meantime, I've had to be flexible with and creative with how I'm using my time and talent. And modeling was one thing that came up where an opportunity kind of presented itself with my girlfriend, who actually models full time. And there was like a partnered gig that she was being scouted for. And so she sent some photos of us, and then her agency ended up reaching out to me directly and seeing if I wanted to get into that. So I figured I'd give that a shot, and that's led to some pretty cool opportunities as well. So that's kind of another side part-time thing. And then, just picked up kind of a steady little day job at a tech company recently last year. So doing that as well. So kind of a lot going on.
Yeah.
And a lot on the horizon too. So constantly moving.
That's great. And I want to talk a little bit about as you've sort of grown up and started to navigate your way through football, through music, now a little bit in the tech world, and maybe the modeling too, but just in general, you've come across a wide variety of people. Let's talk about kind of your mentors as you've gone through your life. Can you tell me a little bit about the types of people that you have sort of looked up to, that have mentored you directly, that you've followed maybe from afar?
Absolutely. Majority of it has been through coaching. And I'd say, my dad has been he was one of my first coaches ever. The first sport I ever did was wrestling, thanks to him. He was a wrestler back in the day, as you know.
A very good one.
When I was 6, 7 years old, I was out there on the mat. He was my coach. And then that kind of carried through to football, playing Pee Wee football and everything. He was my coach there as well. And so obviously I've always looked up to him as obviously my father, but as a great coach and mentor as well. Learned a lot from him about sports in general. I'm forever indebted to him on setting me on the right path to earn a scholarship and be able to play Division I football. So my dad is probably that first one that comes to mind. And then along the way, a number of other coaches. It's hard to really name all of them really, but I've never really had a coach that I didn't learn something from. So sports wise, I've had tons of mentors there. Older teammates, I'd say in college, there's a few guys that you kind of link on to and you look up to a lot and just kind of try to model your behavior and your game after. And I had a few of those at Washington State. A couple of them going on, like my freshman year was backing up Dayon Buchanan, who went on to have an amazing NFL career, drafted first round to the Cardinals. So being able to just be in his shadow that first year and kind of learn from him, watch the way he moved and how he conducted himself, was very special and a privilege for me to be in that spot. And then other teammates as well. And then kind of transitioning out of college, really turning those early relationships, I think, kind of like our relationship, people that I knew who were active or entrepreneurs or, very kind of blazing their own trails are people that I've always admired. And so being able to link up with you, I would definitely consider you a mentor of mine, and just learning watching how you've grown, multiple businesses and how you've, really had to do a lot of it yourself and grown from such a small start. I think of that first picture of the truck, the setup at Walker's Lockers. Yep. I guess that wasn't even a branded truck yet.
It was not.
Just like a U-Haul, right?
No, we slapped a sign on a rented truck. Yep.
I love it. Yeah. But just like the risk takers, people who are excited to try something new and know that there's a big cost that comes with it, but are set on, making it happen. And those are the people I've kind of tried to associate with. And so I'd say yourself, and then this artist, Marky Basie, who's been a big influence on me. He's the one who took me on my first tour. I actually met him through when he did a show at Washington State in 2016. And one of my other teammates, another teammate that I looked up to a lot, Taylor Taliulu, he opened for him as an artist at that show because Taylor was getting into music at the time. And so I got to go backstage and meet, all these artists and everything. And that was kind of my first taste into that world. And then we ended up hanging out with Mark that night. And fast forward, kind of ironically, a few years later, or serendipitously, I guess I could say, he's a member at the gym that I start training at right out of college. And so I had to make that reconnection. And he's been a really good mentor for me in the music world and everything. And a couple of the people in his network as well these days has been my go-to, my crew for sure.
Well, that's great. It sounds like you've had terrific people, but also you've found a way to seek out those good people too. Because, a lot of people will have mentors or people they look up to that maybe aren't quite as good influences or help you move your life forward. So I know you have a knack for doing that, and that's pretty cool. If you don't mind me asking, I know someone else you looked up to was the late coach Mike Leach.
Absolutely.
And I, admired him as a coach. I loved him leading our team. I obviously never got to work with him, or I was not a player myself. But tell me just a little bit about what you learned from Coach Leach.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about the whole trailblazing and that whole doing it your way and sticking to it. That was Coach Leach in a nutshell.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, total. Exactly that. I just like that word for him, trailblazer. Just doing his own thing, from his personality and who he was. That was every room he stepped into. He was the same guy. He wasn't switching up for cameras or switching up for us as his players. He was presenting the same message across every platform, and he just stuck to his guns all the time, and that carried through. And I think that's really what allowed us. Giving a team a message to buy into early on. Like I was part of his first recruiting class, giving us his kind of bottom line message of this is how we do things and this is how it's going to be as long as you're at Washington State, and no other option. It's like get in or get out kind of deal. People were weeded out definitely in that process, but the guys who bought in were really able to kind of glue together, stick together, and bond for those 5 years that I was there. And we saw the program grow from, that first year was 6-7. Went to our first bowl game in 10 years or something like that, and in the New Mexico Bowl. And then the next year was another down year, but then once our class was really kind of taking the reins on things, we saw some great football being played, and we were hitting bowl games every year. And it was fun. It was just fun to be a part of a group that was that tight knit. And Coach Leach was obviously the leader of that whole squad. And so, yeah, definitely fortunate to have met him and been able to play for him and known him well.
Yeah, that's great. And I was, enjoyed watching him, and it was very obvious that the players generally loved him, and he did a great job of leading that group. So we sure miss him. I want to talk to you real quick about, I mentioned that you're a much younger generation than I. Obviously, you're the same age as my kids. Talk to me about when you're building and cultivating relationships with people of, sort of my generation versus your generation. Do you see a difference in that and kind of how you need to navigate through those, or, what's your experience there?
Yeah, I think that's been kind of something fun for me as I've gotten older and especially I've noticed this. I have 4 older sisters. And so growing up, it was like, Kala, my oldest sister, she's 8 years older than me. And so she was always around. I always looked up to her, like growing up. She was like my cool big sister. But we were never like really tight because you're a kid and one's a teen, and then it's kind of like just staggered ages. But as you get into adulthood, you kind of become better friends with your siblings, and everybody's kind of on the same wavelength, trying to figure life out and everything. And you just bond really closely there. And you kind of realize like, oh, we're really all in the same boat. It's been the same way with my parents, like hanging out with them and being able to just see them differently. And like, while we're all just really going through life for the first time and figuring things out as we go. And I think it's easy to hold people to a certain standard when really like I said, we're all just kind of doing things for the first time. But as far as just networking in general goes, beyond family, I would say it's been fun for me. It's been fun to get to know you as a friend and not just, my sister's friend's dad or whatever, and just to be able to pick people's brains, especially as I have these aspirations and things that I'm trying to accomplish. And I see people who maybe not on the exact same path, but have done their own things and have grown their own businesses and accomplished these awesome things in their lives. To be able to have a pool of people who maybe were former coaches or maybe were friends' parents, or just being able to touch base with them and ask questions has been great for me. And as far as approaching it, maybe on a cultural level, but nothing mind blowing. It's the same thing. If usually people are willing to help out when you ask, and so I wouldn't say there's too big of a difference as far as that networking aspect goes, especially once you get to a certain age.
Yeah, I suppose that's true, because you're not a kid anymore. You're a young adult, and I suppose if people are maturing into young adults and they're going into the professional world, there's probably not that big of a gap, but I imagine, like you said, culturally, maybe even if you get to the granular level of things like tools that you use, or we talked about. I'm gonna be sharing your handles, your social media handles, and I ask everybody on this podcast, what's your TikTok handle and your YouTube handle and your Facebook handle, and you wrote back, I don't do Facebook, and which is not surprising to me, but I think for me, Facebook has been a terrific tool from a networking and following
Mhm.
family and friends standpoint, and so I do think obviously there's some differences there, and we're going to see a lot more as time goes on, and then it's people like me looking to people like you to say, hey, how do I stay on top of things, or how do I stay with the times so that I can stay relevant if that's what I decide I want to do, when doing my podcast or some other media project or whatever. So yeah, I kind of find it interesting that you can learn different things from different generations and still get, hopefully, a consistent level of things like risk taking and entrepreneurship and trailblazing and all of
Yeah.
that fun stuff, regardless of the age of the person.
Yeah, it's fun to dream together with people who are kind of your peers and game plan and things, but it's a different vibe when you're getting people who have lived it and have experience under the belt and have those years, of maybe some failures that you could dodge based on their expertise. So
Right.
that's where it definitely comes in handy.
So let me ask you this then: so you're a very educated, smart guy that's willing to talk to people of an older age, and when I say older age, I mean someone that's had more experience. You're not afraid to do that. I've seen that out of you. What advice would you give to a young person at your age, if they want to move forward in their career or whatever? What advice would you give in that regard?
Yeah, just about kind of networking with an older generation. Yeah. I'd say try to meet them where they're at. Understand going into a conversation that, in regards to some of the things like the tools that we're talking about, where we might use different tools or platforms, just contextualizing things. But I don't think you really have to approach it any differently if it's a relationship that's worth growing beyond that initial meeting point. Things should come naturally, and you want things to come organically, obviously. So being yourself, fully, and just being your authentic self and asking questions. Now, I think that's the biggest thing, not being afraid to ask questions about things. Or I think a lot of times we can try to pretend, that we know something. That's been something that I've been learning a lot about in this tech job that I'm working, is being able to say, oh, I'm not sure about that. I gotta, check in on that, or, double check, and let me ask my team about something, because we don't have all the answers. And especially for younger generations, we like to think we know everything about technology. But
wait, I want to make sure I heard that right. You guys don't know everything?
Exactly.
Because
exactly.
you guys seem to have known that when you were in high school. That's what I remember from my kids.
Oh no, yeah, you heard it here first. But yeah, being able to just admit that you're not an expert, that's the first step. Just approaching it humbly and being willing and open to listening to people's stories, and I'd say just absorbing more than you're trying to get out of someone. That's the key to networking, I think, in general, is being able to either offer someone something to someone,
mm-hmm.
or just being there to listen and ask good questions. And a lot of people like to share their knowledge. So being an open book and being a sponge.
I think that's excellent advice. And the truth is, no matter how many years I've been in business and how old I am, I also don't know everything, and I'm willing to admit that. And I know where my strengths are, and I think I know where my weaknesses are. So I'm hoping that someone like me, or whomever you're talking to, is able to be vulnerable in that way too, because again, whether it's the tools or the platforms or just culturally, or what makes people tick today, what happened 20 years ago, what worked 20 years ago isn't necessarily going to work today, whether that's in music or tech or anything else. So so I think that's great advice. So I want to ask you about putting yourself out there when asking for advice or talking to people to gain knowledge. Like you said, you go and you're listening and you're learning things. You're not necessarily trying to get something out of it, although that is, a benefit in the right circumstances. But have you ever put yourself out there to someone that to ask for something, that was a little bit scary or risky for you?
That's a great question. I mean, yeah, plenty of times, I'm sure. Um, I would say, I think what comes to mind is like the first experience that I had with any kind of real like networking event or anything that I'd gone to. There was actually a Cougs networking event. I forget where exactly it was, somewhere in downtown Seattle. It wasn't Cougs first, but it was a smaller kind of networking event, and there were a lot of Cougs there, and it was great. And it was like everybody has that common go Cougs bond.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you know from Pullman. But even in that circumstance, it can be kind of weird when you're around a bunch of business owners. That's where that kind of younger. That was my first experience, I guess. Now that I think of it, with that kind of younger hesitation to approach somebody, who's been doing something for a long time, out of your realm, completely out of your realm.
Right.
It's different if I'm going up to Jason Gesser or, Jack Thompson and saying hello, or, these guys that have that bond from football. But these are people, business owners, different verticals that I'd never explored. And I remember being at that event and feeling kind of just out of place a little bit, like just uncomfortable. It was just new territory for me. But I think having that baseline of Go Cougs is always a good starting point there. So I'm fortunate enough to have that community. And once you kind of realize that and that everybody's in that same boat, I was able to go up and, start conversations, and it all turns into good conversation then. Specifically, I can't really pinpoint one now that I'm thinking of it where it was quite that specific. I mean, even with reconnecting with Mark at when I saw him at the gym, when I was working at the gym and I saw him for the first time, going up to him and saying, because I looked up to him as an artist, I was a fan of his, so going up and saying, hey, I don't know if you remember, but you did a show at my college, and we hung out afterwards. He's describing the night, and so I was like, okay, he really does remember.
Yeah.
And then turn that into like a business relationship with personal training, and then turn that into music and touring and everything. So definitely took some courage there.
Yeah, I think that's a great example of where you didn't shy away from the opportunity, but you also made it very authentic because you were helping him from a personal training standpoint. You're able to connect that to an experience that you had jointly when you met him the first time. You had some level of respect for him in his profession, but also for him in that you didn't just go in and say, hey, I'm doing music. What can you do for me? Right?
Yeah.
So, and for those that don't know what Cougs First is, I just want to say, I mean, I actually think I was there at that event you're talking about. If I recall, you were walking around. I can't remember who you were with, but you were taking photos, and people knew who you were because you were a well-known Cougar football player at the time, and that must be a little bit awkward because you don't know them necessarily, but they think they know you, right? But Cougs First is a networking organization for people that went to Washington State University, and it's a really, really strong set of people, basically, who do a great job of connecting individuals and businesses together that have a common love and experience from Washington State University. And it's probably one of the best, as far as I can tell, best networking groups tied to a college across the country. I think it's a great example to follow. So Cougs First, for those that want to look it up. I'll ask you the same question about maybe going to someone you don't know. Have you ever wanted to go to somebody and just sort of shied away from it because you were too nervous or you didn't know how to approach it? Or
I'd say, yeah, definitely early on. I'd say as after college and even in college, whether that's in the football world, asking teammates for advice or asking a coach for help learning plays or watching film or anything like that can be kind of, a growing opportunity for sure. And I mean, it's like you're there most of the time. If you're in that situation, the person that you're going up to is going to want to help you, unless it's like your direct competitor, which why would you even be approaching them in that way? Right. But I think for the most part, I've learned that people want to help you out. And I think after those first few reps of doing that, it doesn't really bug me once I've made up my mind that this is the right path and this is the right kind of route to go about this greater issue or this greater thing that I'm trying to accomplish. This person could really be a key piece of that. Then that's when I'll, make up my mind and kind of go for it.
Mm-hmm.
Worst they can say is no. That's always the thing, and then it's on to the next. It's better to have that knowledge sooner than later.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with you there. And is there anything that you regret not doing at any point? Like, do you think you've missed an opportunity by not asking for something when you had it right in front of you? Maybe.
Man, I probably try to block all those moments out. Maybe, yeah, I don't know. Maybe I can't really think of a moment. Honestly, I'm sure it's happened, but I can't really think of anything specific.
Well, that's probably a good thing.
An opportunity.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably a good thing because you're not like dwelling on something like, oh man, I should have done this, or I should have stopped this person, or I should have, whatever.
Yeah. That's one lesson from football that, and I think Alex Grinch, our defensive coordinator, who I should have mentioned earlier as a mentor, is somebody that I admire and look up to greatly. Him and my linebacker coach, Ken Wilson, from Wazoo, both of them. Just great mentors, great leaders, but having a short memory on to the next play, that's something that we always kind of emphasize. So maybe that's trickled into my everyday life, and, not dwelling, that ability I think is vital for sure.
Yeah, I wish I had that sometimes. Sometimes I definitely dwell on things that I shouldn't, and then I remember, like, just get over it, move on. Mm-hmm. There's stuff to do, right? So do you miss football? And if you do, what do you miss about it?
Absolutely miss it. The locker room, first of all, just being around your team and being with a group of guys and bleeding, sweating, crying with a group of guys through, the good and the bad. Playing the game, hitting somebody, knocking somebody's head off. The atmosphere, just running out onto the field in Martin Stadium or wherever we were on a Saturday, there's nothing like it. And it's the greatest game ever. So I do miss it dearly. I ultimately made the decision to walk away from the game to protect my head after a pretty bad concussion my senior year, which is kind of gnaws at me a little bit every once in a while. And, you have little cases of the what ifs but when you see stuff going on like Tua and some of these bigger injuries and how serious, this is all becoming, and guys wearing like the Guardian caps and everything in games now is like, it's a serious issue. And I had, a bad draw with concussions, and that was just my career. And I'm proud of the career that I had, but I definitely miss the game for sure.
Yeah, I can imagine. I watched you play it from a young age, and I watched you embrace it, and I watched you excel in it. And I remember when you walked away from it, and I know it was hard for you, but it was also, seems like, the right decision. You got to protect your health. You have a long life ahead of you, and you don't need to damage it any further.
Yeah, that's been another kind of crazy realization, seeing my teammates who did go on to play in the NFL who are now already retiring, after, sub 10-year careers and whatnot, which is 10 years is very healthy NFL, long, healthy NFL career.
Yep.
And now I'm like, well, he's only, this old, he's got his whole life to live. So that also, ties into that reassurance that I made the right decision. And I got a lot ahead of me. So.
Yeah. Do you think some of these guys, I mean, obviously a lot of them made a lot of money. Maybe some didn't make as much as others, but they've got, another career or two ahead of them, perhaps, right? Absolutely. Are you staying in touch with some of them? Are you, are you having relationship, conversations with them about, how to help each other in business or with opportunities?
Oh yeah, definitely. I got a couple teammates that are in music now, a couple that just moved out to LA and they're looking, to get in the studio with me. So we've been doing that lately.
Nice.
And even beyond that though, just, I think reconnecting, having that Cougar basis is just so special because, you can go to a game. I actually think you were at the game at USC a few years back. And Dayon Buchanan was there, talked to him for a while. He had started a trucking company even while he was in the NFL. I don't know if he's still got it going on right now, but another teammate of mine started another trucking company, and a bunch of guys, doing the real estate thing. And it's just very cool to see people flourish outside of that zone that you've known them in for so long and see what they're really interested in. Taylor Taliulu, he started this amazing production company, works with Nike, works with all those guys in the NFL, works with every top tier A-list athlete you could think of, and makes tells amazing stories, makes documentaries, and he's out in New York now. So guys are kind of growing in every direction, and it's really cool to see and to get to know. I mean, when you're used to accomplishing things at a certain level, like playing Division I football, I think that your bar is automatically set higher for yourself, and so it's easier to aspire to something. And that's kind of what kicked me into gear with this music stuff, and had me make the leap down to coming to LA and try to make something out of that passion of mine. But it's been very fun to see everybody, and coaching as well. Obviously, a lot of guys coaching right now. Peyton Plur is the head coach at Skyline High School now, which is crazy. But yes, it's fun to see. It's fun to see everybody flourishing.
That's great. So what are you finding these days? I'm going to ask you a couple of things, a couple of direct questions about stuff. But what are you finding exciting in life today?
Exciting.
In your life, yeah.
Yeah. I would say having nieces and nephews has been pretty fun. My oldest niece is 8 now. And she's going to school at Puesta del Sol as well. And my nephew just started kindergarten there, and he's 5.
And Puesta del Sol, sorry to interrupt, but Puesta del Sol, for those that are listening, is a Spanish immersion elementary school that then takes you all the way through high school if you decide to go that far. And by the time you get out of there, you're bilingual, and it's a really terrific program. My kids all went through it, and Isaac and his family went through it as well. Yeah.
So yeah, having them, growing up, and my youngest nephew, Mac, who's almost 2. I'm losing track now. 3's not that many, but yeah, that's been exciting. And just seeing my parents light up as grandparents again has been really cool. So just spending time with family and seeing the family grow has been really fun for me, I'd say.
That's great. What about what's challenging in your life right now?
Challenging. Recently, it's just been balancing kind of the dream with the needs a little bit, and trying to remember that my music stuff is a business, and while I have certain things, you get inspired randomly, and you have to kind of act on that inspiration in the moment, where sometimes that time would be better used to build up other business within that realm. And so it's been kind of transitioning from this has been a long process for me, transitioning from just, you get home from practice in college and you hop on, and start making music on the computer and stuff and making songs. It's a little bit more, you got to have a little bit more of a structure to it if you want it to flourish into something career wise. And so treating myself like a business and finding all the right ways to do that alone as an artist, and my own manager, and my own, going through all these things where I don't quite have the need for hiring or delegating those responsibilities. It's a challenge, but it's a fun challenge, and something that's been fun to build for sure.
Yeah, and that really takes discipline and someone who's willing to work at it, right? And take some of those risks of, maybe you're giving up some of your leisure time, or something like that, or travel time, or whatever it happens to be. So the next one, what is frustrating you in life today? Maybe that's tied to what you just said, but what else is frustrating you about life these days, or if anything?
Well, the state of football, college football, I think, I have a lot of emotions about college football and where it's gone since I left. Some of them good, some of them just jealous with like the NIL stuff and all that, and having missed out on that. So a few years later, but I'm also very excited about what's going on with the ability for these kids to kind of create a brand for themselves, and the ability to walk away from the game, because not everybody will be able to, play at the next level. So to be able to walk away with a nice cushion of some money and something to sustain yourself early in your career, after having given your all, obviously having your degree, but the schools are making a lot more than that, and the kids can afford, obviously want to be able to capitalize off of that, and it's cool to see that now, and I'm a little jealous. I think that the whole conference realignment and everything, I'm still a little jaded about that, and how everything's kind of shifted, and just everything, it seems like, is turned into money. And I think that with the whole transfer situation now, you'll see a lot less of what I had, the experience that I had in college with the same group of 20 guys just sticking it out together. And times where, guys in their careers where they were high, Luke Falk, our junior year, he could have been gone. A couple $1 million to play somewhere else, leading quarterback in the country, passing wise. And he would never, I don't think he would do that. I don't know. It's hard to speak to that and without being in those shoes. So I'm not going to say anything like that, but having that core group of guys who sticks it out and they can't just jump ship. I mean, we couldn't just transfer and play right away back then either. But beyond that, like the allure of getting pulled in every direction by other teams and other schools to come play for you, it's got to be tough on these college kids, and they are kids. I mean, that Alabama wide receiver the other day, 17 years old, making the game winning play and everything on top of the world. So it's a lot to handle without all the money and without all the attention and everything that comes with NIL. So now I think that's a whole different element. And I say frustrated just because I feel like they open the floodgates on a lot of that without a real kind of restraint in place. And then it also just kind of diminishes a lot of the recruiting experiences. I mean, like a guy like Reggie Bush and all the penalties that he's, taken for. They took his Heisman away. Obviously, he has it back now. But imagine how many cases of that there were with recruiting, and it seems like they just kind of undid all the restrictions they had in the past.
Yeah.
So it's tough to see, but it's also exciting.
I understand that, and I share your frustration on some of it. I'm sure you and I don't see eye to eye on everything with respect to the money and NIL and everything, because we had different experiences. I was not a player. But as a fan, as a fan of a team that's lost its conference, it's reshaping. It looks like, but the money that's asked from people like me to keep the program going, but yet there seems to be no loyalty from players, right, or maybe even coaches, fans, supporters, whatever. I share some of that frustration as well, because it's a lot different. And I grew up in college in the 80s, and I was very involved, and this, but I was very involved in sports. I was a football manager. I was the Washington State mascot, Butch. I was on the rally squad. I was in this group called Coup Guys and Gals, which worked with the recruits that came in. I was in the marketing group for the athletic department. So I was very involved in a lot of that stuff, and I can't imagine doing a lot of those things today with the same sort of level of friendships and bonding that happens over a period of time. It's not just a season. It's just not just a year. It's as you go through the good and the bad, and you experience things together. That's where the bonding really happens. And 15, 20 years later, the experiences that you had back then will translate to your relationships and sort of network today. But if you only had a fleeting moment with them because they were at the school 1 year and they moved on to another one or whatever, it's not going to be the same thing. And I'm really curious how that's going to play out, 10, 15, 20 years from now.
100% agree. The relationship aspect is huge. And I also think just the lessons learned of having to stick it out, not being able, that's not real life to be able to say, I'm not playing here. So rather than bust my ass and try to earn that starting spot, and then maybe that earns me another spot on the bench for another season, but I'll learn, and these guys are able to say, oh, coach doesn't like me. I'm not playing. I'm going to transfer and go to this other school. And it seems like they have unlimited tries at that with the way things are set up. But
right. And that speaks to commitment in a lot of ways, not just, it's a two-way commitment, right? It's a commitment from the schools to the players and the coaches. It's commitment from the players and coaches to the school. It's commitment from the fans. It's a commitment from the university to the fans. And I think through relationships, commitment is super, super important. Whether you're committed to authenticity, committed to longevity, committed to honesty, committed to whatever it is that you're doing, trust. I think that's really important. And again, I don't know in the long run if it's gonna get weird, or if it will just sort of play itself out in a way that's not that different than we've experienced. But it is interesting to see where that's going to go.
Definitely.
Yeah. So last question on sort of this train of thought is, what do you find hopeful these days in your life?
Hopeful. I'd say for me personally, I've got a lot going with what I've got what I'm building out music wise. I'm very hopeful for some of the opportunities that I think will come from some of the music I'm getting ready to put out, some of the relationships that I'm building with developing artists right now. A couple artists that I'm working for, recording and mixing and producing for, very talented, and I think we'll have a lot of opportunity there. And so yeah, I think just the next season, seeing some fruit of a lot of hard work over the last couple of years, kind of really had my head down and been working hard. But it's time to kind of open the vault up a little bit, and I'm excited to share all that and see people's response to that, and also just get to share everything. It feels good to share the hard work and kind of let loose a little bit.
Yeah, it takes a level of, again, commitment, hard work, risk, and confidence to do this. And I admire you for that, because the people that I think do well in the creative world are those that aren't afraid to share their talents in a way that's somewhat humbling but also confident, right? And I think you do that quite well. And we haven't seen a whole lot from you yet, because I know it's still early in your career, but you're putting stuff out there. I've been on some of your live videos on Instagram where you're just toying with some beats or toying with a song or sharing a little bit of this and that, and I think that's great. And I'm sure you're getting some feedback on that, hopefully both positive and constructive feedback, which will help move you forward. I know you just released a music video called PCH, you and your lovely girlfriend Emily, and that amazing car that's in it, which I told you I want. But tell me a little bit about the process of making that music video. And I know your sister Stephanie helped you with it as well, right?
She did, yeah. So my sister Stephanie is extremely creative as well. She loves music videos. She's always loved music videos, just as an admirer, and but also as part of her job. She worked for Snapchat for a while, and she's been in kind of the creative producer space for a long time. So advertisements and marketing. Been doing a lot of that for the past few years. She's since moved over to Activision, where she does a lot of the same thing. But she's always just loved creating visuals. And I share my music with my siblings probably before anyone. I give them the snippets and everything. They're getting early sneak peeks of everything, and they're always supportive. And Stephanie, I played some music for her, and we were kind of trying to figure out what we could do visual wise, and she said she thought she had an idea for PCH, and so she literally went out a weekend before we had kind of tentatively put a date on the schedule to go film this video, and she went out and was scouting locations along the California coast up through Malibu, where we could do this, and she really put the whole thing together for me, and it was amazing. Like, it turned out great. She and a coworker, her friend's name is Rachel Ma, who helped her out, and it was literally, we rented the car. It was a pretty laid back vibe, kind of matches the vibe of the song. We rented this convertible Mustang and started up top in kind of Malibu area, and just made our way down the coast all day. It was a 1-day thing, and stopped a couple places down the coast and did a couple performance takes. And then the rest of it was really just kind of having fun on a Saturday in Malibu. So it was a lot of fun. And then she obviously put it together, edited the whole thing, and did an amazing job. And I'm very pleased, and it's nice to have that kind of talent, right in the family.
Yeah,
literally.
She's probably thinking the same thing about you as well. But yeah, I think the video is actually really great. The music is great, and the look of the video I was really impressed. So pass it on to Stephanie for me, if you would.
Will do.
So there might have been a couple of questions you had for me, based on my questionnaire with you.
Yeah.
Did you want to ask some of those?
I do.
Go for it.
Let's see here. Let's pick which one. All right, we got to get this out of the way.
What's that?
I'm going to limit you to one, okay?
Oh.
What's the dad joke of the day?
Oh, man. All right, as we're talking about cars, why do chicken coops have 2 doors?
I have no idea.
Well, if they had 4 doors, it'd be chicken sedans.
Love it. That's a good one. Okay. Is that yours? Is that an original? Is that Uncle
I don't
Goof
write
original?
Jokes. I just try and remember them and then deliver them.
I guess that's a good one.
Thanks.
That's a good one.
Wasn't sure if
I
I'd
like
get a
it.
groan or a laugh out of that, so thank you.
No, that's a good one. I like it. I didn't see it coming. Let's see here. I got a couple more. Yeah, I always like picking your brain on your entrepreneurial journey and whatnot. What would you say? I actually just picked up this book that's called The Entrepreneurial Leap. I don't know if you've ever heard of
I
it.
haven't.
A coworker of my dad's gave it to me a few years ago, and I just cracked it open, and it's describing these traits of successful entrepreneurs and what these essential traits for an entrepreneur are. And I was curious about what you would say are your three most important traits that every entrepreneur needs.
Yeah, I would say to some level or another, creativity, certainly risk, and dedication and commitment. So I don't know. I have a million ideas. I think you know this. We've talked about this before. Something came out the other day. I just saw on, I think it was on Instagram. There was a product being promoted, and I sent it over to my wife Ursula and said, "Oh man, my idea was executed without me, and it's my fault for not following through." But about 5 years ago, I had the exact same idea, and maybe I'm not the only one, but it's out there, and it's almost exactly what I had come up with, but I haven't followed through on it. And right now, I am, I run Walker's Lockers. I'm an entrepreneur when it comes to my own, real estate business as a independent broker for Sotheby's, Marketplace Sotheby's. But I also do freelance event work, and that's really more just sort of a work for hire. I'm going to work an event in Mexico City soon, and another in DC, and I get opportunity sometimes to work NFL events as well, which has been a lot of fun for me to just keep going. That's entrepreneurial in the sense that it's, that's a little bit of risk taking. It's commitment to people that I've worked with over the years. And I don't know about the creative part. Maybe there's not so much on that, but that's, putting me out there. But there are other things I'm working on that I have these ideas. And in fact, you said something about one of your friends that's working on the NFL documentaries and videos and things. Who was that? Was that
Taylor Talley?
Taylor, yeah.
And it's not just NFL. It's like it's every sport.
Yeah, I'm going to want to talk to you offline about this because I have an idea that's been bouncing in my head for 20 years around something that might be worth talking about. But also, in fact, you and I have talked about it. We won't bring it up here, but it's the documentary series that I talked about. Yeah. But then I have another, product idea that just before I came to record this today, I was upstairs just sort of cutting up some materials to make a little bit of a prototype of something that I think could be a really interesting consumer product. And I haven't talked to you about this, I don't think, but I'm just toying with it, and I kind of feel like it's now or never. If I don't do it now, someone else will do it. Maybe it's a terrible, stupid idea that won't do anything, but maybe it's $1 million idea. I just don't know. So that's where it's the commitment and the risk and the creativity. For me, they all have to kind of come together. And if you just let your ideas sit around, I don't care what kind of entrepreneur you are, you've got to put those things out there and make stuff happen. Because if you sit around, it doesn't happen. It might happen around you or out there, but not with you or for you or to you if you're not sort of aggressive about it, if you will.
Yeah. Nice. I have a follow-up on that based on what you were just saying. So obviously you have a million ideas. I'm the same way with music sometimes, where I'll be working on an idea for a long time, and in my head it's exactly kind of how I had envisioned it. And I got to get some other ears on it that I trust, and so that I'm getting feedback that my ears aren't deceiving me, and that this is actually something that would be enjoyed by the people that have the same taste as me. For you, when do you decide, and how do you decide which ideas are worth putting the pedal to the metal on and really going for?
It's a very good question. Sometimes I get an idea and I spend a lot of time on it right out the gate. And then it sort of fizzles because I'm not willing to invest the time or the money, or it's not the right time or whatever. There was another idea that I had that it just wasn't the right time from a business model standpoint, but I'm thinking it might be. and I need to get on it again. But the other thing is, sometimes it's a little bit fear-based. Like, if I don't do it now, will I ever do it? Or if I don't do it now, will somebody else do it in front of me? And so I kind of just weigh all of those things, and sometimes you just, like, you're involved in a lot of things. I'm involved in a lot of things. Sometimes you just don't want to add something more to your plate, right?
Right.
So I don't know. I think it just varies. I think you got to go after the low-hanging fruit and cultivate that. The big idea stuff, that takes a real level of dedication and commitment, and maybe investment in time and money. And you got to be ready to do that. Just throwing out the big idea and not taking the steps to get there, it can be more detrimental than not taking it on right now.
I like that.
Yeah.
Do you have kind of a network, and this is my last question here that I'll ask for my list, but do you have a network, and this relates to the last question, do you have a network of trusted ears, like in my situation, or people that you go to with ideas that you're not afraid are going to steal them and turn them into something, or mentors, I guess, along that line that you've kind of trusted for advice and business guidance over the years?
Yes, for sure. There are a handful of people. Some of them are going to be on this podcast at some point. But Michael Olmstead is a man that's been my mentor since I was, basically right out of college. I worked with him on these USA cheerleading mascot camps. I ended up working in his office, running the sort of staff and travel program. And then he's the one I'm working with on this Mexico City event that I'm doing. He's hired me for, on and off for 30 some years to work on projects. But not only is, it's not about him hiring me, it's I learn from him every time I see him. And when I have a thought or an idea, I'll bounce it off of him. Sometimes I don't like what I hear on the feedback because it's real and I'm maybe way off base, but I do need to hear that stuff. It's not bad at all. It's actually good for me to hear it, because sometimes my great ideas in my head are not such great ideas in reality. Or you've got somebody that's got a completely different perspective, and it may not even be that it's rejected as an idea. It's just there's a different way of looking at it, and that's really important too, because I'm not smart enough or egotistical enough to think that my ideas are perfect or right or viable or interesting. Some of them are. Now, somebody like Michael is not someone I'm ever afraid of stealing my idea. There have been people over the years where I get excited to talk about something, and then I'm like, "Ooh, should I have done that?" And so far nobody.
You felt some ideas close to your heart with me too.
Definitely. I was going to get there, but I definitely have bounced stuff off of you because again, we talked about the generational thing, but I think you're a very smart, intuitive guy, but also you have a different perspective, just from your age and your group, in terms of your age group, meaning that if my product's going to make it in your world, I want to know that too. And if you don't think it's interesting, maybe it's not that interesting. So, but yeah, and it also depends on different types of ideas. If it's a product idea, I might go to one group of people. If it's or one individual. If it's an event or sports or something related idea that fits in that world, then maybe I go to them. If it's related to, I'm thinking of some security ideas, I might go to the people I work with through Walker's Lockers in the stadium security, NFL security, etc. That I think that they might be a potential audience or customer for my idea. And so I want to get their ideas. So yeah, I bounce stuff off of a lot of people. I have kept a lot to myself as well. And sometimes I feel like I just get excited about something, and if I don't let it out, then either I'm not going to take accountability for it and actually do something about it, or I'm afraid that the feedback is going to be so negative that I just don't want to hear it. So I have to weigh all those things, and if that last one's the case, then maybe I shouldn't be spending any time on it anyway if I feel like it's not that great. So I don't know if that answered your question, but
yeah, absolutely. Michael, it sounds like is the go-to.
He's my primary guy for sure, but there are definitely others that I will talk to about various different things. Yes, for sure.
Can I flip? Can I ask you one more
Of
question?
course, yeah.
Can I flip your question that you asked me about young people approaching an older generation for advice? What advice would you give from the flip perspective about, being approached by a youngster, and what have you noticed when people are approaching you a certain way? It feels like, and you kind of, if you have a moment of like, you don't need to, go about things that way.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that moment?
Yeah, for sure. I do get people. It kind of seems to go in waves where people, call and want advice, or I meet somebody, or somebody has a son or a daughter that's going into, some sports field or even real estate or whatever, and they say, "Hey, do you mind if they spend some time with you?" I'm always open to talking to people about. I don't care if they're young or old or whatever. If they're moving into a career that maybe I was involved in, I'm more than happy to share my thoughts and ideas. Again, it's all perspective, but one of the things, for a few years, I was invited to speak at Eastside Catholic High School to the sports management and entrepreneurial classes, and then also get a little bit involved in the DECA program in terms of judging some of their competitions. And I love doing that because there's so many creative people and ideas out there, and every time I see young people asking good questions or coming up with neat ideas or whatever, it's really encouraging to me, and also makes me think, oh man, I better stay on my toes here, right? But then also, they're, when people are young, they're also pretty unrealistic. I was asked the question in the sports marketing classes. I would say, "Hey, who wants to work in sports?" And of course I know the answer because they're all in the sports marketing class. They'd all raise their hand.
Right.
And then I'd say, "Well, what do you want to do?" And I kind of pick and choose a few people, and they'd be like, "I want to play, I want to coach, I want to own a team, I want to work for the league, I want to work for the team, whatever." And they were all, it was kind of a narrow set of desires. And so what I would do is I would try and bring out the idea that, look, if you want to work in sports, there are a lot of things you can do in that realm. If you're really into finance, maybe you want to consider being some sort of a negotiator, maybe even an agent, right, and support people's contracts. Or maybe you just want to go into finance for a team or a league. If you're really into marketing, maybe you forget the league or the teams and you go to some place like Visa or Coca-Cola, where they have massive marketing groups doing things like Olympics and World Cups. And and I tried to expand their thinking so that they didn't think they had to go directly to a team or a league. Because there are lots of jobs at stadiums. If you're into music, if you're into production, if you're into field management, if you're like turf management, if you're into advertising or catering, there are a whole bunch of different places to go. And I feel like I sort of helped people think a little bit outside the boxes that they were in when it came to how wide the sports field could be. So there's that, and then the other, maybe on the other side, is I have people come to me and their desire is to do exactly what I was saying, is they just want to work for a team. How do I work for a team? And I'm like, well, yeah. And this actually happened to me when I spent 5 years working on the entertainment side with through an agency at the San Francisco 49ers. And I came back and had an opportunity to work for a professional team here, but they didn't want to really pay me anything, and they made it very clear there are 50 people lined up outside the door, ready to take that job for even less than what they were offering me. And I knew that was true, and that was an area where I was like, I'm going to do things knowing that what I'm doing, I'm getting my worth for it, and I'm not going to just throw myself, especially as an adult with children at the time, that I'm not going to just throw myself at the mercy of a team because everybody wants that job. Yeah. So I guess my point there is I let people know that you got to look at where you are in life, what you're willing to risk, what you're willing to sacrifice, pay your dues. I've done that. What they were asking me to do 5 years later was the same thing I did right out of college. When I was an unpaid intern, and my life was just in a different place. So I just had to evaluate how important is that to me at the time, right? Mm-hmm. So I don't know. I think I love talking to people that are moving into new fields that I'm familiar with, and I share what I can share. Hopefully, I have a few nuggets of wisdom, but I also let them work their own way through it because I don't know everything. In fact, I also know that I didn't do all the things all the right ways. Yeah. So, just to kind of to wrap things up, how, sort of looking ahead, how do you plan to leverage your various relationships as you move forward in your personal and professional lives? And when I say
So that
leverage,
sounds,
yeah, when I say
yeah,
leverage, I don't mean in a, what am I getting out of somebody, but how are you going to
right,
navigate your way through this? And leverage is actually a really important point, because,
of
leverage is
course,
not just one-sided. It's a two-way street.
of course. Yep. On that note, I would say keeping them warm, just being in touch with people. Not, I tend to get really focused on my work or what I'm working on, and let some, friendships or, whatnot. The real ones, you can go forever without really talking, and then, pick up right where you left off,
Mm-hmm.
however far down the road. And that's where I'm lucky to have had sports and football, because those are brothers at this point. You know what I mean? So those relationships will always be strong. From like a networking approach, though, keeping things warm, and not in a way of like, hey, remember me? Like, hey, I'm still here, blatantly just to get attention, but just genuinely checking in on people, checking in on people, seeing how they're doing as people and not as a means to an end. Actually developing a relationship, a human relationship with people beyond what you may be able to get out of, or how this could set you up for success. It's obviously, like you said, it's a leverage thing, so it's a give and take. But I think people notice when you're, and I'm sure you've experienced that, kind of just what you were describing, when people are approaching something with an end goal and a set mind, you can kind of tell a lot of the time. And what I've tried to do is differentiate myself by caring about people, and just trying to find ways, like, how can I actually care about this person, and develop a friendship, or develop some kind of relationship that's beyond business. And that's done me pretty well. I think just treating people the right way, and the golden rule of treating people how you'd want to be treated, and going out of your way to check in on people, keep those connections warm. That's been my bread and butter, just being able to relate to people and be open to keeping that connection, I'd say.
Well, you and I share that philosophy, like, to a T, right? People often ask me, "Who don't you know?" And it's not about the quantity; it's the fact that I stay in touch with people. And like you said, there are people that it doesn't matter how long it's been, you're going to have that connection. But I do the same thing. Every once in a while, someone will pop in my head, and this happens to everybody. Somebody pops into your head from a part of your life that was 10 years ago, 5 years ago, 6 weeks ago, whatever. The difference between me and other people, and this might drive some people crazy, is I'll just call them or drop them a note and just say, "Hey, how's it going?" I do that with you, right? And and I do that with your dad, and I do that with a bunch of my friends from college and former colleagues. And can't tell you how many people I've seen and had coffee with or lunch with or whatever, with zero agenda on my part or theirs, just to stay connected. Authenticity, I think, is probably, you were describing it without saying that word, but that's really it, because there's also a balance between, I know, I'll just use this as an example. When I get a phone call from somebody that's like, "Hey, Jeff, how you been? Just thinking about you. What's going on?" And I'm like, "What multi-level marketing group are you with right now?"
Yeah, exactly.
And
exactly.
many, many times over the years, I've had to, but I can feel it. I can experience that in a way that is very familiar to me. And then it turns me off, right? The last thing I want from somebody when I contact them is for them to go, "What does he want out of me?" And I'm sure that's happened, that people have thought that, but most of the time, I would say 99.9% of the time, I'm just truly interested in staying connected. And I know that you're like that as well, and I think that was a great response. So, all right. So share with us again your handles: TikTok, YouTube, Instagram.
Yep. Instagram and TikTok, both Side Street with 2 I's. Instagram, no, that was Instagram and TikTok. YouTube is, you can just search Side Street. If you search Side Street PCH official music video, that'll pop up. Take a look at that. And then you'll find my profile from there. But more videos and more music coming. Side Street on all streaming platforms for music. And those are how you can keep in touch with me.
Great. And Side Street is one word, right?
One street, one word.
One word. Yeah.
Yes.
And when you
One
said
street.
2 I's, it's SIIDESTREET, right? Side
Correct.
Street. Okay.
Yep.
Isaac, thank you so much for your time. Thanks for your friendship. I look forward to seeing you grow. Give my best to Emily, and keep me posted on the new music and videos that are coming out.
Will do. Thanks for having me, Jess.
All
It was
right.
a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
Take care of yourself.
All right. Later.
Bye.